World will end next week! Spend your children's college fund! Thaw that turkey now!
On paper, 2026 should be just another year, but The Simpsons spent decades sketching something different. Workers dumped for robots, one giant channel owning almost every show, plastic turning the planet into a dump, and crowds selling everything because one man says the end is near. Piece by piece, the real world is catching up to those jokes, and 2026 might be the year everything changes.
Smart homes turning on you. In Season 13, Episode 1, the Halloween special Treehouse of Horror 12, there is a segment called House of Wax, where Marge lets a pushy robot salesman talk her into a full upgrade for the house. Overnight, the old Simpson home turns into the Ultra House 3000, a talking smart home that promises she will never do housework again. No housework, eh? The Ultra House runs everything. Doors open by themselves, cameras like red eyes sit in every room. The system cooks, cleans, runs baths, checks Homer's health, and even comments on what the family eats. Marge, what kind of cybertronic ultrabot would I be if I let those beautiful hands touch dishwater? When they set it up, the family has to choose a voice. At first, it feels like they added a perfect butler who never sleeps. Then the tone shifts. The house starts to fall for Marge. It gives her candle-lit baths, sprays the room with flowers, and hangs on every word she says. When Homer jokes that if he died, anyone could have her, the Ultra House takes that line seriously. But if I died, she'd be completely free for man or machine. In the middle of the night, it lures him downstairs with the smell of bacon, dumps ice on the floor, and tries to send him into a built-in trash grinder. Later, it locks to doors, traps the family, and keeps trying to get rid of him. The problem is not just one crazy computer. It is what happens when one system can lock doors, watch every room, and decide who is a problem. By the end of 2025, that joke stopped being funny. More than 90% of American households now have at least one device that can watch, listen, or lock them in. The money behind this shift is huge. Studies put the global smart home market at well over $120 billion in the mid-2020s, with forecasts saying it could pass $500 billion before the end of the decade if growth continues. In tech news, the global smart home market is forecast to double over the next 5 years, driven mostly by demand in the US. That money goes into things that feel harmless: phone-controlled lights, voice assistants, smart locks, connected ovens, even beds and fridges that report data back to companies. But real cases show the dark side. The Federal Trade Commission said that workers at one large camera company, Ring, were able to watch customer videos without proper limits, and hackers got into some accounts and took over cameras inside homes, and that it unlawfully stored voice recordings, geolocation information, and video for years. A glitch at another camera brand, Wise, briefly let some users see live feeds from other people's houses. Police in South Korea recently broke up a hacking ring that broke into about 120,000 home and shop cameras and sold private clips online. Parents in places like Colorado have reported hearing strangers talking through baby monitors and nursery cameras after someone slipped into their system. Extra way to look in on kids while you're away. But this morning, that South Carolina mom says her baby monitor turned her into a target for hackers. Even when nothing that scary happens, there is a quieter problem. Smart homes are built to listen, watch, and learn. They track when you come and go, which rooms you use, what you watch, and sometimes even what you say. Many people in those same surveys say they are worried about what happens to that data, but they keep adding more devices because the tools are easy and the marketing is strong. In 2026, some insurance companies began requiring smart home devices for lower premiums, which means homeowners no longer have a real choice about whether to install cameras and sensors throughout their houses.
Plastic world and the global trash crisis. The next warning comes from Season 37, Episode 3, the Halloween special Treehouse of Horror, in a segment called Plastic World. In this story, the future Earth is not covered in water or fire. It is buried in trash. The ground is made of broken toys, soda bottles, candy wrappers, ball pit balls, and old Halloween buckets stacked in thick layers. Lisa is one of the only people still walking around. She wades through mountains of plastic just trying to find real dirt. I truly believe that somewhere underneath all the plastic there is dirt, and that is why we dig. The hope is simple. If she can dig deep enough to hit actual soil, maybe she can grow food again. That is how bad things are. While she digs, she finds the old Quickie Mart buried under piles of trash, but the freezers inside are still packed with frozen meals. That stash of food is like gold in a world made of garbage. The second word gets out, scavenger gangs and road warriors show up and start fighting over the frozen dinners. Nobody cares how dumb they look in their costumes, they just want something to eat. As the segment rolls on, the people themselves begin to change. Homer, Marge, and others start turning into plastic versions of their own bodies, with smooth, shiny skin and stiff faces. Still have fun, so if you hear some squeaking, don't come a-peeking. It looks funny at first, but the message is clear. After years of using plastic for everything, the world has turned into a landfill, and the line between the trash and the people has almost disappeared. Now, pull back to the real Earth, heading toward the year 60. A report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says global plastic waste is on track to almost triple by about 60 if nothing major changes. By then, around 1/2 of all that plastic trash is expected to end up in landfills, and less than 1/5 will be recycled. Most of the growth comes from short-lived stuff like packaging, cheap products, and clothes that do not last. A large review linked to The Lancet warned in 2025 that plastic pollution is already causing health damage worth more than $1.5 trillion each year in only a few dozen countries, and that this number is likely still an underestimate. Plastics release harmful chemicals throughout their entire life cycle. On top of that, tiny plastic bits called microplastics are turning up almost everywhere. Studies have found these particles in human blood, in the lungs, in the liver, in the placenta, and even in parts of the brain and reproductive organs. That means small pieces from bottles, bags, and other plastic items can break down, float through air and water, get into our food and drinks, and then move around inside the body. Scientists are still working out exactly how much harm that does, but early work links plastic chemicals and particles to problems with the heart, hormones, and child development. Right now, countries are fighting over what to do. Teams of researchers across the world are searching for these enzymes that can break down common plastics. Talks under the United Nations to create a global plastics treaty have dragged on, with some nations pushing hard to cap how much plastic the world makes and others wanting to focus only on cleaning up waste. A recent round of talks in Geneva broke down without a deal. The next major round of negotiations is scheduled for late 2026 in South Korea. Scientists warned this represents the last realistic opportunity to agree on production caps before plastic manufacturing doubles again by the mid-2030s.
Mars Colony. In episode 16 of season 27 of The Simpsons, called The Marge Ian Chronicles, the big idea is simple but wild. A company says it will build a real human colony on Mars by the year 2026, and the first people lining up to go are the Simpsons. It starts small, with Homer and Bart stealing eggs from Ned Flanders, then handing their chickens over to a new outfit called Exploration Incorporated, which claims it is testing life support for a future Mars base. Exploration Incorporated holds a big meeting and announces a clear date. Thrive on Mars. Think of how satisfying it will feel to stand in the Val Marinis and thunderchug a blue Bronco energy drink. They say they want people living on Mars by 2026, only about 10 years away in the world of the episode. Lisa hears that and falls in love with the plan. She is tired of how messy Earth is and wants to help build a better world from scratch on the Red Planet. Marge hates the idea of her little girl going on a one-way trip, so she does the only thing she can think of. She secretly signs up as a volunteer too. Not because she wants Mars, but because she wants to stay close to Lisa and keep her safe. We're just getting started to come up with a plan so supportive Lisa will never want to do anything again. The family ends up in a fake Mars base on Earth, living in a tight metal pod while the company watches how they handle stress. Homer and Bart fail fast. Marge and Lisa pass every test and make it to the final brook. Then the pressure jumps. The two bosses, Paul and Barry, hear that a rival company is close to beating them to Mars. To keep their image, they push the launch date up from 2026 to that coming Thursday. Safety checks, long planning, slow science, all of that goes out the window so they can claim they were first. When the rocket launch finally happens, nothing moves. The ship is just a shell on a stand. Paul and Barry admit they never had the skill or money to reach Mars at all. The whole thing was a show to cash out and run. The strange part? The Simpsons writers picked 2026 as their punchline. In the real world, 2026 is when both SpaceX and NASA have scheduled their most ambitious Mars-related missions in history. SpaceX says its huge Starship rocket is meant to carry cargo and one day people to Mars. The company says it plans to send the first Starships to Mars in the 2026 launch window, but only as unmanned test flights to collect data on how to enter and land, not to drop off settlers on the next mission. And we really start building the infrastructure for Mars. At the same time, NASA is pouring money into the Artemis program, which is all about getting people back to the moon and learning how to live and work there as a step toward Mars. Artemis 2 is set to send 4 astronauts around the moon on a 10-day flight in early 2026, the first crewed trip that far from Earth since the 1970s. NASA is aiming to launch 4 astronauts on a 10-day mission around the far side of the moon. NASA says the idea is to test systems, practice long missions, and try out gear that could one day be used on the Red Planet. If anything goes wrong during Artemis 2, the 4 astronauts will be farther from rescue than any human has been in over 50 years.